Good evening, everyone. This is Shantae, aka Shanteezy. Welcome to my analysis today on Monday, June 22nd, 2020. Yes, I'm late. I was supposed to be 10:30, but I was still doing research. I've been doing research since 7:30. I need to start my research doing it early, but I was catching Roland Martin Unfiltered because I like to watch a show. But here am I with my stuff, so I'm just going to get right into it because it's late. And if you want to catch it, this is going to be posted on my timeline. So here we go. So the coronavirus, as you know, we're still dealing with coronavirus. We're still in the midst of a pandemic. Despite, some cases are flattening, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. So that's where we are. So in terms of the number of cases, we are at 2,003,010 and 786 cases of COVID-19. In terms of death, we are at 120,393. So, and keep in mind, a lot of the states are open, some are partially open, some are fully open. So that's what's going on. And so I'm going to get into the specifics of COVID because I'm going to actually stay a little bit on the COVID topic, even though it's going to merge into politics. In terms of the other cases in other places that is not being mentioned in the news, Brazil is the second behind us. They're at 1.1. So it was 1,106,470 cases. This is all from the Johns Hopkins website. Russia is at 500,091. 400 cases of COVID-19. South Korea is at 12,000 because I just skip it because behind them, you have India behind Russia and Peru and all that. But I'm getting to the lower tier numbers. And there's a reason why I'm getting to them. So once again, South Korea has 12,484,000 cases of COVID-19. Senegal has 5,970. The Congo has 5,924. And Haiti has 5,211. El Salvador has 4,808. Now I'm going to get to the very lower tier numbers. Uganda, 774 cases of COVID. Jamaica, 665 cases of COVID-19. So to sum this all up, the countries that are more black and brown have the least cases of COVID versus the cases that are more the lighter tier. The white tier has the most cases. And who's the number one on the chart? The United States of America. The richest nation in the world has the most cases of COVID. And rank number 26 or 27, according to one of the doctors I watched today, who name is Dr. Ebony Hilton. We're ranked number 20 something. We're in under 25 in the cases of testing. So, that's nothing to celebrate when you're celebrating testing 28 million people when your population is over 320 million people in this country. We're not even the largest nation on the globe. It's actually China. And China has way less. China has probably under 200,000 cases of COVID-19. Well, you blame China. But I'm going to get into that to destruct that as well. So that's where we are. And of course, like I said, there's no testing. But Trump's shocking revelation, I'm pretty sure you guys heard it. I watched a little bit of the rally. I don't really like to watch him, but I watched just in case to get the analysis of him. And he said testing is a double-edged sword. I have it written somewhere, but I remember it. Testing is a double-edged sword. And when you have testing, he said there's a lot of cases. When you do testing, there's more cases. So he told his people, slow it down, slow it down. That's what he said, do with his hands like this, slow it down. I'm just like, okay, slow it down. The root of testing is to get to the problem. So this way we know who can self-quarantine. That's the point of testing, to find out who is not just have the symptoms, but who is asymptomatic, right? That's what That's what the whole thing of testing is for. So we find out who's asymptomatic. We find out how they recover, how they resolved, as some people say, or how, they wean off. Because it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to resolve out of your body once you are diagnosed. Because it takes about a week to 2 weeks for COVID to hit your body, but it takes 14 to 21 days to resolve. So it takes nearly close to a month, right? So that's where we are in terms of COVID. So when you say slow down the testing, it's like a shocking revelation. It's like he's saying the quiet parts out loud, which we all know. But those who are smart, you don't have to be a political scientist. You don't have to be a doctor, a medical doctor, especially like an infectious diseases infectious diseases doctor, or you don't have to be some kind of analyst. You can be just a regular person like me who has a regular job, working a regular 9 to 5. I will be going back to 9 to 5 again. I know that Donald Trump basically is withholding the testing which is allocated, but I'm going to get into that a little later in this live too, right? So that's what it is. So when he says these things, I told them to slow the testing down. Let's take those words into heed. He really is slowing down the testing, because that's why we have the most cases on the globe with not even the biggest population on the globe. Does that sound right? Let me say it again. We have the most cases on the globe with not even the biggest population on the globe. Keep that in mind, people. Keep that in mind. So with the 23 cases rising in our state within the 2.3 now million cases within 3 months, we know New York has the most cases, but we have not seen increases in our cases. We actually see more people resolve. We see, even though we saw about 31,000 people died throughout the state, but we have taken measures of social distancing. We actually slowly reopening in phases. New York City just reopened in phase 2, which phase 2, I told everybody, consists of 50% of capacity in your office, with plexi shields around your desk, wearing your PPE and your gloves and temperature checks before you go into work. The salons and barbershops are 50% of capacity only through appointments only. Restaurants, bars outside, tabling 6 feet distance, and playgrounds at distancing, but only no contact sport, only softball, those that have distance sport, not contact sport. So that's phase 2 in New York City. But I'm about to get into some folks that don't listen in New York City. So back to the 23 cases rising. So New York is starting to flatten their curve. I pray, I hope, because I haven't seen anybody, I haven't heard any alarms, people going to the hospital and stuff, but I have. Other places like Arizona, which has 54,586 cases of COVID and rising. Florida has 100,000. They hit their 100,000 mark. Georgia is at 64,000. Texas is at 108,000 cases of COVID. And that is since their reopening. Places like Georgia and Florida did not do longer stay-at-home orders. Not even too much Texas. Or even halfway Arizona. Their stay-at-home orders was probably less than a month. Versus New York State, which our stay-at-home orders lasted for about 2.5 months. And New York City, it lasts about close to 3 months with our stay-at-home orders, right? So pretty much is yeah. And these states that I have read, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, and Texas, have all Republican governors. And I'm not saying all because it's a Democrat and Republican thing. I'm just saying there's Republican governors like Mark DeWine, who if that's his name, Mike DeWine, who has issued stay-at-home orders for a lengthy time, right? You have people like in Maryland, you have Governor Hogan, who's a Republican, who got test kits, had to go to South Korea to get those test kits because it was a connection with his wife because Donald Trump wouldn't give him test kits. So I'm just saying this, it's a sense thing, a sense like this here, knowing the science and going according to the data. You got to go by the data in order to reopen in phases. Say what you want about Governor Andrew Cuomo, slightly about de Blasio, but what you say about Governor Cuomo, he did the right thing by reopening places in certain regions and reopening in phases and not at full capacity, 50% capacity. Nightclubs is not even in phase 2. And I'm getting into DeSantis because he said something today that alarmed me, and I'm going to read it. The rising cases in Florida cannot be explained anyway by increase in testing, and announced the plan to step up enforcement of social distancing practices at bars and nightclubs. And that's according to an article in Political. Why is nightclubs are in your phases? I have no idea. That is more entertainment. Bars and restaurants, if you're going to do bars and restaurants, you should do outdoor. And this is where people don't follow their scientists. But then again, he fired public health officials that basically released data that he did not want to see because there are rising cases in Florida. And earlier in the months of the pandemic, he blamed New Yorkers from traveling to Florida and spreading COVID, which we all know that's a crock of BS. He's the one, Governor Ron DeSantis, who did not close his beaches until he was pressured to. The spring breakers, he let spring break happen. Next thing you know, a week and change later, those spring breakers had COVID-19. Some of them was on a ventilator. I don't know if they made it or not. But the whole thing is, you can't blame no one but your failed leadership. Florida should have had Andrew Gillum. Despite whatever he had going on, he would have been much better in leadership than Ron DeSantis, who is poorly making bad judgment on opening beaches, relaxing on social distancing social distancing measures, giving people the free liberty and choice to wear their mask. But the mayor of Miami, who is a Republican, keep in mind, he was diagnosed with COVID in the height of the pandemic, is requiring his people in the city to wear masks. I mean, these measures should have been in place once the CDC has said to wear your mask. I'm staying long on COVID because I just feel like we have gotten away from COVID because all the civil unrest, and which I definitely understand, and I stand in solidarity with the protesters and the activists. But we have eased away from COVID, and while we focus on civil unrest, people are relaxing on their social distancing measures, and it's really pissing me off. Really pissing me off. Like, it's pissing me off to a point where I go out on the street and I see certain people without no mask. And then those are the ones that want to go in the store and cause problems. For why? I don't understand. I don't get it. So that's why I'm reporting on these numbers. In terms of the death rate in Florida, they have 3,173 deaths and counting. The death rate in Georgia is at 2,648. And Indiana, no one talked about Indiana, has 2,500 deaths. Now, there was an article in CNN which, was interesting, and it was about young people in the South and the West are being diagnosed with COVID. They're the rising cases. And I read some stuff. The former director of the CDC, who was also the former health commissioner in New York City, under, I think, the Bloomberg administration, said younger age group of recent infections that last, what is it? Oh my God. Messing up my own reading. But he basically said it's 20 to 40-year-olds who will infect people around them. But what Dr. Fauci said to Axios is the recent high number of cases in young people are not surprising because they're relaxing. They like relaxing on their social distancing measures and not wearing masks, because some of them here in New York, especially some of them teenagers, some of them early 20s, are not wearing a mask, and they're all clammed together. A quote from Dr. Fauci is that they get infected first, then they go home, then they come home, then they infect the older people. The older people get the complications, and then they go to the hospitals, Fauci says. The death rate always lags several weeks behind the infection rate. So it takes about like 2 to 3 weeks, like 14 to 21 days, somebody on a ventilator, and next thing they die. Because that's what happened here in New York. Also, in Florida, cases surpassed 100,000, which I read. The Department of Health confirmed it. Also, California, I haven't mentioned. 35% of the confirmed cases we've recorded is just in the past 2 weeks. In terms of masking, parts of the country has been divided. And a Dr. Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA commissioner, said this. Masking has been controversial, and it shouldn't be. And he's right, because it's this Republican tote line again. Now I'm going to have to get on the ideological view and the stupidity of it's your personal liberty, or quote unquote religion, as they say, to wear a mask, because they become so frigid, as Donald Trump say, like he's this kind of religious and free liberty person, when he's a person that doesn't give a damn about humanity, right? So why should it be controversial? It's wear the goddamn mask. If you can't find one, which I'm pretty sure people are able to find some, but the price gouging, which some states, like my state, has said they will persecute people for price gouging, which they should. You make one. You wear a scarf. You wear a bandana to protect your face, because you're not supposed to touch your face during this pandemic, period. That's why they keep telling you to wash your hands, because you could be touching, and it's not because of the surface, it's the people touching the surface. Because you learn something new about this virus every day. They ask you not to touch your face because it's an animal disease. This disease comes from a bat. A lot of virologists on TV have said this time and time again. It don't come from, it wasn't made up. It came from a bat, which was that bat was actually on the coast of China, like the territory of China. So all this make up bullshit and all this saying that it's man-made, people really need to shut the hell up, because this disease is an animal disease. Pretty sure of that. But meanwhile, they reported 17 states have saw declines in new cases, such as Maine, Louisiana, Maryland, Alabama, Alaska, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, Mississippi, shockingly, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota, and Vermont. So there's something that these states are doing right to see decreases, just to open in phases. I know in New York City, we only open in phase 2. And like I said, it's at 50% capacity. It's not even at 100% capacity. I don't think we're going to be at 100% capacity of anything anytime soon. And you know what? I rather have it that way, because people are relaxing on their social distancing, and social distancing comes a long way. The only way we can combat this if we stay the hell away from each other, stay isolated, 6 feet apart. I know it sucks. I haven't saw my mom and my sisters in 3 months. I saw my dad. My dad comes down to me once a week, but we stay distant. We don't even hug each other. We wave. And we talk to each other at a distance because we're trying to save each other. He's a diabetic. I'm mildly anemic. We're trying to save each other. People in my family, like I say, all are immunocompromised, including me. But I'm not as immunocompromised as my mom and my sisters. So, but I do have a mild case of anemia. I do. It runs in my family. So those are the notes that I have about COVID-19. So I just can say it's just, and also lastly, I'm going to get into that part too. So that's just what it is. In terms of this White House press briefing nonsense, Kayleigh McEnany basically lied through her stuff, came out real defensive, talking about that the media coverage of violence this weekend. She talking about violence in Chicago, Minneapolis, and New York. I don't know where the violence in New York because I haven't heard anything really besides the fireworks, which I think is a conspiracy theory slightly, which I don't know is a coordinated thing. I don't know. But what I do know is she lied and she blamed governors and Democratic states and cities about the violence, and we're a place of law and order, and that the government, and it's shameful of defund the police movement. And I quote her, it's a misguided and it only will hurt vulnerable Americans of American cities and must at the most, and it's sad and it's shameful. Girl, please. Reporters did press her on this thing, and they asked, did Trump actually direct officials to slow down the test rate of coronavirus? She said no, he has not. He's directed, and that continue to test 500,000 people per day. We all know that's a lie because they only tested total of 28 million people. And she said there's 1.8 billion invested in NIH, and then she said we have tested 26.7 million people has been tested, and north of that some crap. And then the follow-up was, did he tell people to slow down the testing, and what does he mean about that? She said he was trying to expose what the media has often do. She said something that they ignore, that the U.S. has more cases because we have more testing, which is bullshit, and a whole host of other crap. So she said, did he tell people to slow down the testing? So is that true? That's even true? And she said it was a comment that was said in jest, like it was a joke. That's not a joke. And then she goes on and says stuff about the media, and she said, and the guy asked it, is it appropriate to joke about coronavirus when 120,000 people died? He said he was not joking about the coronavirus. He was joking about the media, the failure to understand what testing is. And so Waji, the Asian reporter from CBS, asks her, has the president ever delayed the allocation of federal funding that has already been dedicated to national tests? And she said no. On the contrary, the president has led the way to make the leading country, to make us lead the country in testing. And the FDA has authorized different tests, including molecular tests and antibody tests, 144 tests. Girl, please. And then the follow-up was the administration is sitting on $14 billion of funds that is approved but not allocated for testing. So she says, she mentioned about the 1.8 billion in NIH and explaining the new testing is we're leading the way in testing. And then it was asked about, this is interesting. Trump has declared himself to be the least racist person in the country. Why does he use racist phrases like kung flu? And so McEnany said the president does not have, the president doesn't. He points out the origin of the virus came from China, and it's a fear thing. it's a fair thing to point out, that China is ridiculously tries to rewrite history and ridiculously blames coronavirus on American soldiers. And so there were more follow-ups in terms of labeling the virus. So she said, I will label this virus as the place of sword, aka she co-signs it, right? And so she was asked again, linking to the place of the origin. That's what she said. And then YG asks, what do you say to Asian Americans that were offended? So McEnany said, we totally protect Asian American communities in the country and that they are, amazing people. So YG follows up with her again and asks the White House, so you don't think this is racist to label the White House, label the virus as the Chinese virus? And McEnany pivots to the same tote line. So what gets towards the end is Yamiche Alcindor of PBS News asks her this: does the president attack attack the move of the Confederate statues across the country? He said it was an assault on our heritage. What does the White House say to Americans that find this offensive to glorify people who own enslaved African Americans? McEnany's response was, we're seeing across the country, and it's quite confusing. You see statues defaced like Gandhi, and she goes like on and on about Confederate statues and justifies this whole entire thing. And then she gets mad about the whole, then puts some stupid statistics out, and then gets mad about the whole thing about George Washington thing to be statue to be taken down and whatnot. And then she was asked, do you agree that Kung Flu was racist? Because Kelly Conway said this was racist. And then she said she doesn't believe it's offensive to note that the virus came from China and steps up for the U.S. military, where China is making the active effort to completely defame U.S. soldiers. So here's this thing with this administration. They're racist. Plain and simple. They're racist. And these words coming from them, I'm trying to say it all in one because I've been taking oral notes. They're racist. And, it's nothing more of epithets that I want to give them to say. And they're deplorable. That's the one to know. They're deplorable. And so with that forth, this is why exactly you should vote. Because this man is going to Phoenix and this mega church saying that COVID has, they have an installations thing where they say that COVID, they could get rid of COVID within like 99% of the COVID cases. Like, this is the most tone deaf administration on the planet. And speaking of the racism, Donald Trump, in an NPR article, it's the last topic that I'm covering, basically is extending a executive order and freeze on green cards for new immigrants and sign in order to suspend H-1B, 1J, and other temporary workers' visas. And that includes skilled workers, managers, and even care workers. This administration, time and time again, is just attacking people, attacking them left to right. And I'm just going to read a little bit of what I take notes. This order targets H-1B1 visas, which are designed to certain skilled workers, such as those employed by the tech industry. That's important. As well as the L, in which it also is for execs who work for large corporations, like Asian workers, Indian workers, and Africans too, that has these great jobs. Often workers are suggested, including other workers affected, including foreign appearance, and which provides child care for white families. But it does not include professors and scholars, because most of them are probably white, or some of them are black. The order does not expect to affect immigrants and visas already held here in the U.S. And what an Obama official said, the ban on H-1B visas, which are often used to fill very niche positions that are easily found in American workforce, will ultimately prove to be the counterproductive and an example of using a nuclear bomb to address a bar fight. So basically, he wants white Americans to have these jobs. So if they wanted these jobs so bad, why like 10 and 15 years, 20 years ago, they did not take these jobs? Because they thought they were above it all with their jobs and getting more money than the people that actually have these jobs, which some of these people that have these jobs are actually college educated. So they want to be careful with their whole thing of bringing American jobs back when these jobs were available, you didn't want them. Remember that. So this is exactly why I say, and I always express the importance of voting. Should vote like you mean it. Because when you don't vote, stuff like this happens. Consequences. Elections have consequences. Turnout has consequences when you don't turn out. So I'm going to end this. It's please vote. Vote like you mean it. Our New York state's elections is tomorrow. I already sent my absentee ballot in. But I'm going to call just in case to make sure it's there. And also, wear your mask and wear your gloves. Please. I beg you. We're still in the midst of the pandemic. And keep your head held up high. Because there is light at the end of the tunnel. And we got to make sure we meet it there. Have a good night.